Wonderful. Thank you, Carrie. Welcome, everyone. We are excited to share with you a little bit of a continuation of our future workforce study. And this particular session, we are focused on the next generation of engineers. We've got some great young professionals and even some students who are involved in engineering and are going to share with us some of their thoughts. And we're going to compare that with some of the research that we did in our workforce study. And we have the author of that study with us, Joe Bates, who is a senior research consultant at the ACC Research Institute. He is going to lead this session, share some of the data from that study, and we're going to get some great insights from our young professionals and students who are with us today. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, Joe, so you can introduce your panel and get us started. As Carrie said, please feel free to put questions in the chat. I'll be monitoring that and sharing any questions with Joe along the way.
All right, thanks, Daphne, and it's great to be here with everyone today. For those of you who are returning, we welcome you back. For those of you who have never been with us before on one of our webinars, welcome to the webinar. We've got some great panelists today here. As Daphne said, we have two engineers that are currently in practice, Tess Sobel and Sadar Khan-Bilvardi. And then we have a student, Carrie Wingard, who is also with us today. So I'm going to have each of them just take 60 seconds and introduce themselves. Tess is having some technical difficulties with her video. Everything worked when we ran through our prep session. She was online early and something happened afterwards. So at least you'll see her photo here. And Tess, go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Good
You're on mute.
afternoon.
Tess, you're on mute.
What?
Oh no, we lost her. Okay, we're gonna come back to Tess in just a minute. Carrie, let's go to you.
Hi, Joe. Good afternoon, everyone. As I said, Carrie Winger. I'm a current full-time graduate student that also is doing research currently. And I'm also working full-time as a project engineer in a land development consulting firm. Um, I have many years of leadership experience and mentorship experience. And yeah, I'm super excited to be here and share some of my thoughts.
All right, thanks. We're glad to have you with us, Carrie. I know you also do a lot of volunteer work with other students at the Florida International University, so I think you've got a really good finger on the pulse of what students are looking for. And also we have Sadar here with us. Sadar, go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Hey, everyone. I'm Siddhar Kambavardi. I'm a water resources engineering specialist with STV based out of New York. I've been working with STV for about 3 years right out of college. My work for the first year and a half was mainly in the transportation and infrastructure sector. And then I've segued more into the water and water resources avenue. And I'm super happy to be here. I'm super excited to speak with everyone.
All right, great. Happy to have you here, Sadar. I will say also just Sadar and Tess both have less than 5 years of experience in engineering. And as Carrie mentioned, she is a current graduate student, although she does have some prior experience as well in the workforce. So we really are focusing on what young professionals are looking for from the ideal employer. If you were with us in one of our previous webinars where we talked about the workforce study, this was a section we didn't get to. So we thought, let's go ahead and make a whole section just on this one area. So I want to talk out and or talk first
Joe,
and
if I
foremost.
can interrupt you, it looks like
Yeah.
we have Tess back. So if you want to do a quick introduction.
Oh, great. Tess, just in time. Go ahead and introduce yourself. Can you hear us, Tess?
Maybe
All
she's
right.
still having some difficulties.
Yeah. All right. Keep an eye on it for me, Daphne.
I sure will.
Hopefully we'll get Tess here back in just a minute. Um, Looks like she's connected. She's trying to find her mic. All right. So I'd like to set the stage here and just remind everyone who, and those of you who haven't heard this yet, the workforce study is a very extensive study. We talked in great detail in the study about a lot of the population statistics. So I want to go over just some of the real key finding, highlight high level key findings here to help us set the stage and talk about why is it so important that we focus on young professionals today. So we did a lot of number crunching and pulled in data from a lot of different sources. And the bottom line is that in 2022, we had about 166,000 new engineering students who graduated either at the 4-year university level, master's degree, or PhD. So these are all engineering students who were available for work in the workforce. But in that same year, the data that we have sifted through and collected showed that we had over 184,000 individuals either retire or leave the field of engineering. So that left us with a gap of 18,000 engineers just in that one year. So that's a lot of engineers. And when you compound that each year, and we think based on demographic trends, and also international student enrollment trends we think they're going down in the last year or two. This gap is only getting larger. So that leaves us with a challenge. How are we going to attract and retain young engineers? And so that leads us to our first section of questions. I'm going to be sharing and then stopping sharing so that we can sort of see full video here of our panelists. And my first question actually is going to go to you, Carrie. As a student, when you're looking at engineering firms today, what's sort of the minimum threshold that you expect when you're considering employment in the future when you graduate? What's kind of the bottom line? Hey, if an engineering firm doesn't do X, Y, and Z, then I'm probably not even going to take a look at them.
Thank you, Joe. Such a wonderful question because eh, it's a personal experience of mine, and when I was looking for work, but overall, getting feedback from some of my peers and how things are now, looking for internships and full-time jobs after graduation. The main thing on recent grads or student minds is having a little bit of flexibility at first, just because that transition, and also having a great or a clear path in the new job. I get a lot of feedback on saying like, oh, I'm not too clear how I'm gonna grow with this company or so. But most of the time when there's a clear path of growth, I feel like that's like a great point of interest for new grads and students, just to kind of see like where they can get, and how they can grow with the company as they choosing the next job, or the permanent job. So it's really clarity and be transparent in what they offer and path of growth, and more for those that are looking to be involved as a leader, or grow as a leader within the company. For me personally, that was one of my things, and yeah, so I feel like that's probably one of the top things that are non-negotiable, probably.
Okay, great. Sadar, you've been working for what, 3 or 4 years now?
Yep. Just over
So yeah, so in the first year or two, what signals did you see at STV that told you this is a good firm, or, well, maybe I'll stay for a few years, but I'm going to keep my options open.
Yeah, absolutely. So to kind of tie it into what even Carrie was saying, when I first joined, something that's one of actually STV's main core values is community. And it applies to both community within the company and obviously to our clients overall. And that's something I really valued because engineering, right, in its purest sense is problem solving. And the best way to do that is to first understand the people that are asking the problem. And with STV, we really are people first, and it not only builds great relations, internally as employees, but also with clients. And that sense of community, like Carrie was saying, that sense of growth, direction, everyone's rooting for each other. When you're first starting out, it's the classic saying, you don't know what you don't know. But when you come here, people are super helpful and really just allow you, hey, like, what are you interested in? Okay, well, let's see if we can get you involved in maybe this type of project or this type of project, right? When you're starting out in engineering, even within, for instance, I'm environmental engineering, such a wide range of environmental projects. And really, when you're starting out, the best thing you can do is take on all those projects because you get to find out, hey, I really like working in the water sector, but not really too much in maybe sustainability, something like that. So it's really helpful having that exposure and that sense of community within the company for sure.
And Sadar, you actually founded a group at STV for young professionals, right? Tell us a little bit
Yep.
about that.
So about just over 2 years ago, we founded a group called Rising Professionals at STV. It was catered to those between 0 to 5 years of professional experience within the company. And we really created it out of a need as, me and a few other of my colleagues realized, especially with a bigger company, say in STV, we have 46 offices across the country. And an office like New York City, which is one of our main hubs, that has maybe 300 rising professionals, and you can network and interact with them on a day-to-day basis. But for me, I was in a satellite office about 40 minutes out of New York City. I was the only one in my 20s. And I know a lot of rising professionals really face that challenge where the nearest one closest to my age is 2 states over. And so it's really hard to network and connect with them. And so we really sought a way to bring that community together within the company. And we've had about 25 events in the past 2 years. We do stuff like executive Q&As with some of our top executives, getting them to have a chance and speak with the rising professionals. We have networking sessions where we have one person from every business unit come and get a chance to present themselves. Hi, I'm so and so. I'm based out of California. I'm in the infrastructure group. Here's what I do. Another one can be on New York, talk about buildings and some of the work they do. And it's really a great and collaborative session. And I'm really happy with all the work we've done for it.
That's really great. And that dovetails really nicely with what you were saying about a firm letting and promoting young professionals doing things that make them feel like they're have that community. So it's not just
Absolutely.
about the work, right? It's about the
Yeah.
networking and making those connections. So I think Tess might be back.
Yeah,
Tess,
testing, testing. Can you guys hear me?
yes,
All
yes.
Great,
good.
wonderful. Oh my gosh, of all times.
All right. Well, I'm so glad you got things figured out. Hopefully, we won't have any more technical issues.
Yes.
So first of all, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, and then I'm
Yeah,
going to ask you a question.
yeah, absolutely. So, my name is Tess Sobel. I'm a civil engineer, just got recently licensed actually this past July. I'm based out of Chicago, living downtown, grew up in the Chicago suburbs. And I work for Kimley Horn and Associates as part of their land development group. So right now I've been focusing a lot about data center development and helping lead our project team on that. Prior to working at Kimley Horn, I went to University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, graduated in 2021. And right now at Kimley Horn, in addition to my practice, I am also leading our standards committee, where basically, a lot of our project managers and our analysts get together, talk about better ways to become more efficient as a group, training up younger staff, giving them the tools they need to get equipped with all the tools that our group has, and making sure that they're getting integrated nicely. So thank you all for having me, and
Great.
sorry again for the issues, but right now we only got a mic, no video, so
No,
sorry
no
about that.
worries. We showed your mugshot earlier,
Oh,
so
great, perfect.
so I think it's really amazing that we were fortunate to have all three of the panelists who also are working with other young professionals. So that was not something we planned, but I'm really interested, Tess, in what are some of the things that you see or hear from the other young professionals you work with when their expectations aren't being met by the employer?
Yes. So, and it kind of goes into two different categories for me. I think, there's the category of young professionals that become disenfranchised with consulting itself, as, engineer consultants, where, consulting is a demanding profession where, we're expected to serve our clients and make sure we're meeting deadlines. And that's not always what people going to school for engineering envision, right? Where there's a huge aspect of consulting attached to it after college at a large amount of companies. So that's when, they start to leave the profession itself. I think when firm specific expectations aren't met, I think a lot of that has to do with the people that they're surrounded by, which is what I've seen where, the saying comes to mind, people leave people, not companies. So I think, hiring good staff and making sure that, proper mentorship is in place, good mentoring pairs are in place, as well as, boss staff support all kind of ties together in that where it's making sure that the young professional, feels supported by people below and above them. And that's when, if that's not being met, that's when they start looking to switch firms within the profession.
Oh, that's really good insights, Tess. Thank you for sharing that. I'm going to go back to some of our data, and let's talk about non-negotiables. This is the next section, sort of what must employers have to even be considered by young professionals today. And I want to talk a little bit about some of our data first. So what we see here, we asked about 31 different characteristics of an employer, and then we group those into six groups of like ideas. And what you can see here are the most important aspects of the ideal employer when you look at those higher level groups of six is leadership and communication, compensation and stability comes in a very close second, career growth and development. We've talked a little bit about that as well. Work-life balance and flexibility. Carrie, you mentioned flexibility, workplace culture and values, and then purpose and impact. And that purpose and impact's a little less important, but it's still important to a large percentage of individuals. And in fact, when we look at young professionals, that is something that's a bit more important and does stand out at 77%. It's still at the bottom of the list. So that's kind of important to remember that there are things that are must-haves, and that's what we're going to talk about in the next segment. And then there are things that are differentiators that can make an employer really stand out. So we're going to talk about that in a few minutes after this next segment. So I'm going to go back here to our questions, and I want to start this time with Sadar. When you think about these non-negotiables, right? What the must-haves, salary and compensation. That's something that comes out pretty close to the top, and then that leadership and communication. When you think about compensation, what makes you feel like, okay, this is fair compensation, and what looks like it's not fair on the flip side?
Yeah, absolutely. And it kind of touches into even one of the other sections in that graph, which was also communication and stability. And especially with compensation, one of the biggest complaints someone could have, whether they're a young professional or even someone more senior, is that there's no real structure or anything like that for compensation. Okay, you put in this many years, this is your task, and this is what you're getting compensated, right? One of the biggest complaints anyone could have when dealing with compensation is, well, I'm working out of my scope and I'm being compensated for that current level. And so if you're a company, I think really having clearly defined structures and guidelines of what's expected and the compensation package connected with that, it keeps employees, it keeps employees in the loop and really just ensures proper communication because that's a constant mistake done with compensation is that you think you're doing outside of your scope and the employee and the employer really isn't compensating. So I think really making sure that that framework is set can really allow for avoiding mistakes like that.
Okay. Tess, when you, how do you feel about the compensation issue? And then I also want you to add in, because you do work with leadership, and I know Sidar does as well, but what are those leadership behaviors that help build trust in young professionals?
Yeah, absolutely. I think compensation, there's obviously the financial aspect of it, but there's also the aspect of, opportunities given, where am I being given the opportunities to progress my career in a way that I want it to go? I'm not staying stagnant and, there's a small group above me holding all the cards, right? So I think that's a part of compensation where, like, if I'm, putting in a lot of effort on a project, at the next project, maybe I take on a little bit more responsibility to grow in that sense. As far as leadership and building trust, going back to communication, um, that's such a key part of making sure that anyone in your group you're leading, one, it's communicating feedback, making sure people are understanding if they're on the right track or not, and also just communicating, when you are giving, more responsibility to someone or an opportunity, making sure people feel comfortable being able to go to you with any kind of issues, struggles, and making them feel empowered to take on that additional responsibility that you need them to. So, creating that bedrock, honest and often communication between a supervisor and an analyst, I think is such a great way of building up younger staff and making them feel comfortable.
Okay. Before I go back to Carrie, Sadar, I just wanted to ping you on this issue of trust and faith in your leadership, right? Because it is important to young people as well as older professionals. This is something that's pretty universal, but what's your perspective? Do you have any examples of times when you've seen leaders really engaging and building that trust? And on the flip side, have you seen mistakes made?
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, I mean, trust is one of the core values a successful, pretty much anything can have. Relationship, company, right? It's all founded on trust, whether it's internally with your employees or even with your clients, right? Those are the two biggest things you want. And I think, first of all, with trust, one of the biggest things is communication. It's having that dialogue constantly, whether it's your leaders or your manager, just always having that communication on what's the next step, where are you at with your career, what's like, how do you enjoy it? Is there anything like, is there stuff you want to try? Is there other avenues you want to maybe pursue? All that stuff, having that communication with a manager or a leader, it's crucial, especially whether you're a project manager and you're working on a team, having that communication with your team. Hey, how's this deliverable coming along? Like, are there any obstacles that we could potentially face the next 2 weeks or a month? Really streamlining that communication can ensure that trust is really synonymous throughout the whole team.
Great. Carrie, let's get the student perspective. When you're looking at compensation, what does fair compensation mean to you? And are you looking at starting salaries? Are you looking at benefits? Are you looking at the whole package, or is it really like, what's my paycheck going to look like?
Thank you, Joe. It really depends on the person. A lot of times, I hear a myriad of different opinions on this. It is a hot topic within the student community. to discuss how much you're making or what are you doing in the new job or what you're getting. But I see a trend where if the compensation doesn't match the lifestyle of the person, it really doesn't matter the money of the amount. It's almost like, okay, um, I need to look at the work culture in that company. Next, is it flexible enough for me to grow as a leader? Can I go to conferences, because that's important to me. Would they allow, it, you know? So now compensation for the student is almost like a package thing. If it doesn't come with like a few things that are mostly for leader students or students in leadership positions where they want to continue building that if it's not allowed, with the company they're going with, they're not going to take that offer. So uh, I see a trend where, a lot of people just want to grow a lot in the management side of, their job, straight out of college. So I see that more. And then, I live in South Florida, so for here. Definitely, the living expense, it's pretty high. So it's almost like, okay, this is kind of expected that my salary kind of matches that, but not necessarily it's the priority for a lot of the students here. I see, work-life balance, do I have enough, time off? Like how many hours am I doing a week? So now it comes more like a package thing more than like the one thing that is a must to have for compensation. So yeah, I hope that helps.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. And one of the things we talked about previously when we were preparing for this is that students and young professionals and everybody nowadays have pretty ready access to what others are making, right? There's a lot of tools online that you can look up, and you can drill down by geographic region. These are things that my generation simply did not have, right? Do you see this, happening in among the people that other students that you have worked with and that have graduated? Is that a real thing these days?
Very real. I'm a civil engineer student, and ASC being the organization to be it has all the tools for every step of your engineering course. So there is a salary calculator that you can go by all the way up to like a zip code. Like you can put your zip code, you can put different data, like what path of engineering you can go in, you planning going into, if whether to be land development, structural transportation. You can put all these different details and filter out and really know what the trend is and what the pay is and salary wise. And other thing is we have a lot of in our school we have a lot of career events. We have at least 4 or 5 during the year. And in here, you see the competition between the firms and like who offers the best package just because they kind of like adapting to this new trend of like, okay, it's more than a salary, it's more than time off, but what other things I can get, um, from this company? So yeah, I'm seeing that change now more. So
Okay.
I hope I hope that helps those
Yeah.
students out there.
Yeah. No, that's a really good insights. Daphne, do we have any questions from the audience?
Yeah, and I think kind of tied into what you're talking about now, Joe, and maybe this is specifically for Tess and Sadar, as you're thinking about compensation, the question is around, there's some engineers obviously may be more talented than others within the working group. Some may be taking on more responsibilities. Sadar talked about that a little bit, right? About getting opportunities for special projects and so forth. And so is that creating tension among the employees, the engineers, you've got someone maybe doing more, taking on more work, performing at a higher level, but being paid at the same level because of the way the compensation package is or the scale is developed. So just curious on, how do you feel about that as a young professional?
Sidar, you
Yeah,
want to? Oh,
yeah,
go
Daphne.
ahead, Tess.
Sorry, is that okay? I that
Yep.
one kind of it speaks to me. That's definitely something I've gone through in my first 4.5 years at Kimley Horn, where a lot of analysts are at different levels, right? And you can say, oh, don't play the comparison game, but everyone does play the comparison game. So, one thing Kimley Horn does really nicely that I think recognizes that gap in certain skill levels that are still at the same, year level of being out of school, but someone's probably taking on a lot more responsibility and putting in more effort and time. They do a great job of recognizing that through, extra bonus, where they have a range where that could be, they're compensated financially more than someone at the same level doing less. And that helps relieve that tension a bit. But it is a tension for young professionals, especially since it's a more rigid compensation for each level. So I think that's something that I think helps, as well as spot bonuses, things like that, ways to recognize above and beyond effort. Definitely helps alleviate that tension, and we've seen that work really well at Kimley Horn.
Sidar, how about you at STV?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I agree with a lot with what Tess was saying about especially providing bonuses, right, to those that are outperforming their current roles, and just kind of tying it back into that, having that structure, right, of within your job. If you start to expand upon your current role and your current projects, or your work quality, vastly improves, I think, a good manager, right, a good company sees that and allows then conversations to be had. And it kind of ties back into, when it comes to compensation, really having that framework solidified, so that, hey, if you have an engineer who starts to outperform and overachieve, instead of just giving a clap on the hand, being able to have a conversation and really, push them along in their career so as to avoid any mistakes before. So I think, along with bonuses, and also just as a company having frameworks to be able to, when that does happen, being able to promote them or continue them along the career pathway chain within the company, I think can really be a good thing.
Daphne, I know we got quite a few questions coming in. Do you have any more?
There was just a follow-up to that as to whether these panelists would be interested in compensation that would be based on productivity or project-based. So something other than, kind of a regular, structure of here's your level and number years of experience, et cetera, but something that was more productivity-based. Any thoughts on that from the panelists?
Yeah, I can tackle that first, and then Tess, I'll pass it along to you. It's a very interesting question because it's very flexible, right? In terms of, I would say, in terms of, if you can clearly define that as a company, in terms of what that productivity looks like, and then I think that can be a really good thing, Nicole. I think if you can really, sit down, whether it's HR, recruiting, as a company, and really say, okay, what does increase in productivity look like? Is that purely the quality of your work, where it's hard to really quantify, right? Or is it, well, this person is, both engineers, both 2 years in, one engineer is working on 8 projects and maybe one is working on 2. There's pretty good reason to say, well, if the engineer is working, on all those projects and maybe has to even put in some overtime, that engineer, maybe his compensation should be changed. So I do like the idea of a change in compensation based on productivity, but I really think it'd be good if they can have a framework for that really solidified.
Yes, Sardar, I agree on that. I mean, it especially like looking at all the different kinds of projects. I'm just thinking about us, public versus private, and how profitable projects can be like that versus time spent. There's your large couple $1 million projects versus small programmatic programs that can bring in the same amount of fee, but it can get lost where how much it can vary between the different disciplines of engineering. I think it has to be paired with something where you can look at how productive and how much billable time someone has in a year, but you can also look at what their impact is, not just on the project but in the firm, right, in the company. Are they helping mentor younger analysts? Are they helping other teams, and going above and beyond? A way to recognize those aspects as well, and when they're not considered, I think would be a pinch point in that structure where there's more to someone's impact than how many billable hours they have. And I think recognizing that would be a huge part of compensation for younger staff.
So these are all really interesting thoughts. So thank you for the questions and thanks for your comments, Sadar and Tess. We're going to move to our next section. So this last section here, it was about compensation, about leadership. They're the two must-haves. If you don't get those right, then it's going to be really hard to attract and retain your young talent. So now we want to talk about the differentiators. What are the things that can really set your firm apart? And what are young professionals looking for when it comes to that? So let's take a look at what some of our data says, and then we'll come back to our panelists. So again, we asked these 30 some different characteristics, and we asked all this survey, by the way, was among all professionals at engineering firms, including 200 students in engineering programs. We had over 2,000 respondents to this survey, both young professionals, mid-career, older professionals, executive leaders, and non-engineers at all different career stages as well. So the data I'm showing on the screen is the total, the overall. But I'm going to talk about some of the differences that if you read the report, you'll see these differences laid out as well. So some of these specific characteristics that are the most important, again, a lot of these fall into those top two groupings. Managers who provide clear expectations, competitive compensation and benefits, leadership teams that model integrity and follow through on commitments, job security and stability. That's something we have seen throughout this entire report that we produced is very important to all different career levels. Opportunities for advancement, and we've heard a lot of our young professionals talk about that today. Approachable, visible, and engaged leadership. I think we've heard about that as well. Willingness to invest in employees, recognition that employees are people and not just workers, and retirement benefits, which actually is not quite as important to young professionals, but it still makes that top of the list there. So these were the most important characteristics. When we get to the next slide, we see these are lesser important, but they're still really important areas that that are something to consider. Because when we talk about least important, you might expect to see percentages in the 30s and 40s. Well, of these 30 some different characteristics, the lowest one you see there is 56%, but after that it was 72%. So these are still really important to a lot of people. But you see employee focused philosophy, support for mental health and well-being, a sense of belonging, a workplace that respects diverse perspectives, flexible work arrangements, opportunities to make a tangible difference in people's lives, a mission that aligns with employees' personal values. And then again, that lowest one is community involvement and service. But in the report, we talk about a lot of areas that are more important to young professionals than these overall averages would suggest. So, for instance, respect for diverse perspectives and backgrounds. That's 12 points higher in terms of its importance to young professionals than to older professionals. So there's these gaps that we have, right? Flexible work arrangements, an 11-point difference in terms of importance between young professionals and older professionals. Respect for personal boundaries and time, reasonable workload. Those are 9-point gaps. Job security and stability, 8-point gap. A mission that aligns with your personal values, an 8-point gap. So there's most of these lesser important characteristics end up being quite interesting differentiators for young professionals because they actually are much, much more important to the younger professionals than to the older professionals. So I'd like to talk a little bit more about this with our panelists. Okay, I gotta pull up my questions here real quick. So again, we had a long list there, and I know all of our panelists have looked at this list and have thought about it, and we've talked about it a little bit before. But I want to start out with you, Carrie, as a student. When you think about your future employer, which of these factors, which of these attributes and characteristics really jump out at you as being differentiators? You know, once you've gotten your basics met, what really would make a difference to you?
Thank you. Yes. So for me, definitely, alignment with my values and a strong mentorship were absolutely key for me, especially, because I'm juggling different things. I'm a full-time student, working leadership roles. So flexibility just, is one of those things that was very, very important for me. And I here at Pillar, where I am at, they from the very first day, they offer that. And I felt like my firm, really made a difference for me. So for me, that was really important and it really stood out. Um, and more when you speak to others and you kind of do the comparison game a little bit. In my case, I feel really grateful to where I am right now just because it they really meet every single expectation that I had and created that set boundary, from the get-go. And it really, just it creates loyalty. And I see myself being here long term and it really is more of a long-term investment. That's how I see it. And they invested in me and I truly appreciate that. So that will be it for me. Yeah.
Okay, great. Sudar, I'd like to hear from you about what things were really important of these sort of differentiators, right? When you first were looking for a job, and has that changed over time?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when I first started out, the two I really resonated with from that chart was uh, opportunities for growth and managerial support and having clear expectations and communications, especially, and we've touched on it earlier in the panel about talking about when you start out, you really want to have that exposure across all the different types of projects to be able to build your career. But exposure really doesn't, I would say it's at its most sustainable when it has clear direction. Because when you first start out, if you're just thrown 10 different projects and you have no idea where to start, not much progress is going to be made. You're going to be a jack of all trades and a master of none, right? So to speak. And I think really when you're first starting out, having that clear communication with your manager saying, hey, I would love to, work on these vast types of projects. And then as a manager or a leader, seeing that young professional really being able to, hey, here, this is going to be a new topic for you. Here are the steps I think you should take. Here are the resources I think can really catch you up to speed so that after you're exposed to all these different types of projects and you can progress in each one, it really builds a strong foundational framework for you. And that's how I felt when I first started. And honestly, even now, I feel the same way, right? It's anyone in this industry knows it's 3 years, 3 years, even 5 years. It feels like a lot for the young professional, but to the more senior people, you might as well still be a baby in the industry, right? So it still applies there. There's a lot I don't know about the industry, and I look forward to getting more exposure on different types of projects and different sectors. So those core values and core expectations that I want for my career, they still hold the same today.
Okay. Tess, how about you? Were there areas of any of these areas that were more important to you when you first started that are maybe a little less important now?
Yeah, I definitely have seen the tension between work-life balance and then workload and winning work and growing my career that way, where I came in and absolutely valued and still value respect for my personal time. But, as I've kind of seen the flip side of, how any company wants to run with, remaining profitable, winning work, growing clients, things like that, that takes time and that takes, staff and planning and making sure everyone is staffed appropriately so that we can serve on those projects and serve our clients well and no one's overloaded. So there's a delicate balance there where you want to take on the next project and you want to take on the next responsibility, but also it takes more time out of your schedule, right? As any new task does. So I definitely, as I've gone further in my time here at Kimley Horn, have seen the importance more of making sure workload is managed correctly, versus respect for time, and making sure those go hand in hand.
So one of the things that I learned in this research, because I'm Generation X, right? So I'm a little bit on the older side now, and we always used to talk about work-life balance. But in this research, what I discovered is that younger professionals talk more about respect for my personal time and workload. So the words are a little bit different. And since I have you all here, I really would like to just dig into that for a minute and understand and help our audience, those of us who might be on the older side, you know, is it the same thing? Like, is work-life balance really the same as respect for my personal time and workload, or is there some nuance that maybe we don't really get, but you all really do see? Tess?
Yeah, I can take this one. I was just talking about this the other day, actually, where I think work-life balance is now it's being replaced by work-life integration, where, and I do think it's a different concept between respecting time, where I think people typically look at work-life balance as, oh, it's a rigid schedule of 9 to 5, and I know what, my time is going to be. But with this industry, demands and projects can build up. It's a roller coaster of time expected, over the year, right? So it's, I think, having a more flexible expectation of, maybe I can work later this day, but tomorrow I have to leave early for a personal reason, or a personal engagement. Having that flexibility, I think that's more representative of respect for personal time, whereas it's contrary to the standard work-life balance and a rigid schedule, and that's kind of how I think about it.
That's really, really helpful. Carrie, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well.
Thank you. Yes. I agree with this. For nowadays, I see more that I want to have enough time for myself and be able to really disconnect from work when I'm out of work. And we do see a lot more than the 4 day work weeks. I'm actually in that schedule where you work 10-hour days and you have 3 days for your weekend. So it's really something that you see now more often. And I feel it's because of this kind of switch into, I like more time for me to do, more, in my personal life, but then give you, quality work time when I'm at work. So I feel like just respecting those boundaries, no matter the year or the time, I think that's just important. Um, but being more flexible now, I feel like it resonates more with the younger generation for sure.
Yeah.
And people want to do more like active days. It's not so much like, oh, let me go home after work. It's not, let me go to the gym, let me go do this socially, let me even, share, some time with maybe with my coworkers, my peers. So it's more like the range is wider. It's a wider range of activities and more than just like want to have just time for my family. Now it's more like I want to have a social life and I want to have time for myself and then different things. So
Right.
yeah, I do see that now is a little bit more flexible when it comes
Okay,
to
so
that. So
flexibility
yeah.
seems to be really key here. Sadar, anything to add? Any other thoughts you have on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I completely agree with Carrie and Tess. The word that keeps popping up is really just about respect. I mean, it's really seeing from a company perspective, is really seeing your employees as people first and understanding, hey, what can I ask of them? And I respect your time. I respect the work you do here. I'm not gonna, ruin other aspects of your life by making you work whatever 100 hours a week, right? So it's something we've tied on to throughout the panel, but if you're a company of any size, 10 people to 10,000, just having that respect for your employees, it will always come through tenfold back to you with the work they do and the interactions they have with clients. And it really is full circle.
Great. All right, so let's turn back to the audience. Daphne, any questions that you have?
Yeah, I have a couple questions, Joe. So the first one is about we talked a little bit earlier on about the package, right? The compensation package, benefits, et cetera, and sort of that total package. And so we have someone in the audience asking about what is your preference as you think about kind of a standardized package, right? So company X offers these benefits, and this is what the package looks like across the organization, across the firm, versus Carrie talked about this a little bit, opportunities for joining professional organizations or going to conferences or whatever that might look like. Is that, and do some of those benefits outweigh more PTO or some of the other benefits? So is from a panelist perspective, are they interested in sort of this individualized package of benefits as opposed to standardized benefits? Do you think that attracts more younger professionals?
So, Carrie, I'd like to give you the first shot at that one, and then I'm going to go to Sadar and we'll follow up with Tess.
Thank you, Daphne. And Joe, so I believe yes. Nowadays you almost see like a kind of customized package, depending on the audience. Just from conversations having with younger professionals that, they already got the PE license and, friends that I know that have been in the industry a little bit longer. And I see the contrast when it came to like when they were looking for work and what it was offered maybe 4 or 5 years ago to what is offered now within the community now as students, recent grads. It really is a big difference within the last 5 years. And I feel like the standardized package does not conform to a lot of the needs that the new generation have. So I see like a shift on the companies and how they offer their benefits now and their compensation differently, and they present it differently to a younger audience. I see it in the info sessions. I see it in the, on the career fairs and different things. So yeah, there's definitely a shift into more like a customized depending on your level of experience you have, and, have you been working for the past 5 years, or are you a recent grad? So yeah, I have seen that, definitely the difference. Yeah.
So Sadar, what are your thoughts on this one? Because you were talking about let's make sure we can operationalize it, standardize it, make sure it's transparent. What do you think about this idea of customizing individual packages, like having trade-offs? This is more important to me, so I'd like more of that, and I can have less of this.
I would say I like the idea, but again, I think it tackles back to feasibility because then it's, what's the framework for that would look like? And something that Daphne had brought up in the question really stuck to me, which was someone maybe choosing extra PTO versus being able to go to a conference or something like that. And honestly, in my opinion, I think a good company doesn't make you choose between those two. I think, for instance, a conference is beneficial more so to the company overall. The purpose of a conference is to connect with old clients, maybe future clients, or even current ones. And for instance, at STV, I mean, that's something, especially in our water group, we constantly want to go to conferences because that's where we can really push our work to new and potential clients and get to see how the industry looks like in your current region. And so I'm a very big proponent of, you know, salary or PTO compensation. That's separate because that's frankly just for the employee. But stuff like conferences, networking events, all that stuff, I think at least a mutually beneficial, if not more so in the company's direction. So I would strongly encourage, obviously, it's the feasibility of funds and being able to do that. But if that's something that a company can do, I think conferences and networking sessions, a hour conference or an hour networking session can do more beneficial stuff to your company than a 3 month proposal ever could. So
Okay.
I would strongly consider that.
Yeah, interesting thoughts there. And so Tess, I'm going to give you the last word here. What are your thoughts on this idea of personalized compensation packages?
Yeah, I think, options are always good. It's just a matter of the right options. I think, Sadara, you hit the nail on the head where it's, maybe not so much comparing PTO to conferences, but um, something we do here that immediately came to mind was, you can choose for, retirement contribution match or, opt for helping a match for student debt. So that would aim more towards younger professionals. And that would give them a choice between the two. And I think that's something along more of the lines that whoever asked the question, I'm sorry, I didn't see who asked, but they were getting at. And I think that's always a good option because, there's a huge range of ages, people at different milestones in life where compensation, like maternity leave, PTO, um, uh, all the insurance, things like that, it applies very differently to all those different stages of life. So, I think that's something that would be good for option-based compensation.
Great. All right, well, we are out of time, and I'm going to have to throw it back to Daphne, but I just want to thank all of our panelists. This was really, really interesting for me, and I hope the audience was also getting as much out of it as I was. Daphne, back to you.
Great. Thanks, Joe. I want to give a big shout out to our panelists. Thank you so much for leaning in and really, just sharing with us. I think it was very helpful to our attendees, and we really appreciate your open honesty. Also, a big thank you to our donors who made this research possible. Again, this is from our Firm of the Future study on workforce. And Joe, if you'll go to the next slide, we'll give you the QR code so you could download that study. If you haven't already, I'll warn you, it is a big report. It's about 100 pages, so there is a lot of information in there. We touched on just a small piece of it, focused again on our young professionals and what they're looking for. Thank you, Joe, for leading us through this discussion. We will be sending you a evaluation. Please let us know how you liked the session, what we could do better. We take those very seriously, so we hope you'll give us your feedback. That'll be coming to your inbox shortly. And we hope you'll join us for our next session, which is on February 26th, where we will be looking at Q1 for 2026 and the state of the engineering industry. So we'll be looking at some economic data, our Q1 sentiment study, a lot of good stuff there. So we hope to see you then. Until then, be well.
Thanks, everyone.